Marcus Thorne still thought that the silence inside his luxury Buckhead townhouse was a sign of peace, until a single sentence drifting through the crack of the bedroom door tore that illusion apart. Outside, the December drizzle of Atlanta was coating the old oak trees in a cold mist, but inside, the heating system kept the house at a perfect, cozy temperature. Marcus shook the droplets from his cashmere coat, carefully placing the bouquet of purple tulips, Vanessa's favorite, on the console table in the foyer. He was home 2 hours early. The Midtown Commercial Complex project had just been approved ahead of schedule, and he wanted to surprise his wife with a dinner at Pascal's, that southern upscale restaurant she always raved about. The warm, soulful notes of John Coltrane's In a Sentimental Mood floated softly from the ceiling speakers, mingling with the scent of expensive sandalwood candles Vanessa always lit in the evenings. Everything seemed perfect, just like the portrait of the upper-class life Marcus had spent 30 years working tirelessly to build. He loosened his silk tie, stepping lightly up the thick carpeted stairs, intending to wrap his arms around his wife from behind and whisper the good news about his year-end bonus. But when his footsteps paused before the master dressing room door, which was left slightly ajar, the smile on Marcus's face vanished. Vanessa's voice rang out, not in the sweet, cajoling tone she usually used when welcoming him home, but in a sharp, calculating, and impatient pitch he rarely heard. "No, Sheila, I told you, I have to wait until after Christmas," Vanessa said, her voice hissing through the gap, echoing strangely in the quiet house. "My lawyer, Mrs. Calloway, made it very clear. If I file before the 5-year mark, the alimony calculation changes completely. I am not wasting 4 years and 11 months of tolerating this boring husband just to walk away with pennies." Marcus felt as if the floor beneath him had just given way. The flowers in his mind, and the pride of a devoted husband, seemed to be crushed in an instant. He stood rooted to the spot, gripping the banister until his knuckles turned white. Tolerating? Boring. The woman he had cherished, the woman he had taken on a tour of Europe last summer, the woman he proudly introduced as the queen of his life, was talking about him like a maturing investment bond. On the other end, Sheila's voice crackled tinny through the speakerphone, loud enough for Marcus to catch snippets. "But if he suspects the bonus." "He won't suspect a thing," Vanessa scoffed, her laugh sounding harsh against the smooth jazz background. "Marcus is too naive. He believes in eternal love and all that sentimental philosophy old people like. You think I stay because I love the way he cooks pot roast on Sundays? I'm waiting for that year-end bonus to hit the account. The moment the money clears, I'm filing. He will be my final Christmas gift, literally, a package for me to unwrap and take everything inside." Rage flared in Marcus's chest, hot and fierce, but it was quickly extinguished by a cold, numbing paralysis. He remembered the times Vanessa had asked detailed questions about his investments, how she had insisted he add her name to the investment trust account 3 months ago, claiming "we are a team." It wasn't about bonding. It was preparation. She was clearing the path. He looked down at his polished Italian leather shoes, then back at the partially open door. If he barged in now, screaming and demanding answers, Vanessa would deny everything. She would cry, claim she was just venting, or blame Sheila. And more importantly, he would lose his leverage. His grandmother, Big Mama, used to say, "Never let your enemies see you bleed, baby, or they'll just bite harder." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady the frantic rhythm of his heart. He needed a plan. He needed to know if Vanessa was truly that ruthless, or if this was just idle, boastful gossip with friends. He needed a test. A painful but necessary test to peel away that painted mask. Marcus quietly backed away to the front door, opened it, and then slammed it shut loud enough to echo, pretending he had just arrived, while a crazy but necessary idea formed in his mind. Wow. The mask has finally slipped, and the betrayal is real. If you are still watching and find these detailed twists valuable, please drop the number 8 in the comments below. Let me know you're here witnessing this with me. And if you haven't joined our community yet, I highly recommend you subscribe to Black King and turn on that notification bell so you never miss a single moment of the drama. Your support is exactly what helps us continue creating great content to inform and inspire you every day. Now, let's get back to the story and see exactly what crazy but necessary plan Marcus has in mind. Nothing tests a man's character more than having to smile at the person holding a knife to his back, especially when that person is sitting across the dinner table. 3 days had passed since the incident in the hallway, and the silence in the Thorne household had transformed from peaceful to suffocating. It was Sunday evening, usually the warmest time of the week in their home. The rich, savory aroma of slow-cooked pot roast filled the dining room, a recipe Marcus had learned from his grandmother and perfected over 20 years. He placed the heavy ceramic platter on the table, the steam rising in the dim light of the chandelier, but the comfort food felt more like a prop in a stage play than a meal. Vanessa sat opposite him, scrolling idly on her phone. She hadn't looked up when he entered the room, nor had she complimented the smell of the beef, something she used to do religiously. Marcus watched her for a moment, his heart heavy. He remembered Big Mama's voice rattling in his head, a warning he had ignored for too long. "Baby, everybody can love you when the sun is shining. You gotta watch who holds the umbrella when it rains. The real person shows up when the wallet is empty." Tonight, Marcus was about to make it rain. He cleared his throat, the sound startlingly loud in the quiet room. He had spent the last 48 hours rehearsing this performance, making sure his shoulders slumped just right, ensuring the dark circles under his eyes, which were real enough from lack of sleep, were visible. "Van," he said, his voice cracking slightly, just enough to sound defeated. "Put the phone down, please. We need to talk." Vanessa sighed, a sharp exhalation of annoyance, and placed her device face down on the mahogany table. "What is it, Marcus? You've been acting like a ghost all weekend. Did you forget to pick up the dry cleaning again?" "It's not the dry cleaning," Marcus said, pushing his untouched plate away. He rubbed his face with both hands. "I didn't want to ruin the weekend, but I got called into HR on Friday afternoon." Vanessa's eyes narrowed instantly. The change was subtle, reptilian. "HR? Why?" "Budget cuts. Restructuring. They're calling it a strategic realignment, but the result is the same." Marcus looked her dead in the eye, delivering the lie that would determine the rest of his life. "I got fired, Van. Effective immediately. The entire senior architecture division is gone." For a second, the room was so quiet Marcus could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. He watched her face, praying to see concern, shock, or even fear for him. Instead, he saw mental calculation. Her eyes darted to the side, processing numbers. "Fired," she repeated, her voice rising an octave. "But what about the year-end bonus? The payout is next week." "Gone," Marcus whispered. "They gave me 2 weeks of severance, that's it. They found a clause in the contract to avoid paying out the commissions. 2 weeks. Vanessa slammed her hand on the table, the silverware rattling. "Are you kidding me? Marcus, we have the mortgage on this house. We have the lease on the Range Rover. We have the membership at the country club." "I know," Marcus said, leaning forward, feigning desperation. "I know, honey. It's bad. The market is terrible right now for architects at my level. It could take 6 months, maybe a year to find something comparable. We're going to have to make some hard choices." He paused, watching the color drain from her face, not from sadness, but from anger. "I've already looked into it," he continued. "If we list the house next week, we can probably get out before we miss a mortgage payment. We can downsize. Maybe rent a 2-bedroom apartment over in Decatur. And I'll need to cash out the investment accounts just to cover our living expenses until I find work. Sell the house." Vanessa stood up so abruptly her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. "Move to an apartment? Are you out of your mind?" "I am not moving to Decatur, Marcus. We might not have a choice, Van. We're a team, right? For better or worse." "I didn't sign up for this," she hissed, looking at him with pure, unadulterated disgust. "I didn't sign up to be the wife of a failure. Do you expect me to go back to teaching Pilates 10 hours a day just to feed us because you couldn't keep your job?" "I'm asking you to stand by me," Marcus said quietly. "I need to think," she snapped, grabbing her phone. This is too much. I can't look at you right now." She didn't ask if he was okay. She didn't offer a hug. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the dining room, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. A moment later, a door slammed upstairs. Marcus sat alone at the cold table, the pot roast congealing on the platter. The silence returned, But this time, it wasn't peaceful, nor was it suffocating. It was clarifying. The test was over. The results were in. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and saw the red timer still ticking on the screen. Marcus sat alone at the cold table, pulled out his phone, pressed stop recording, and dialed the number saved as Mrs. Calloway Attorney. Sometimes the coldest place isn't a winter street corner, but the bed you share with a stranger, and the warmest place is a charity kitchen filled with strangers. The morning after the disastrous dinner, Marcus found himself sitting in a leather wingback chair that cost more than his first car, surrounded by the scent of old books and lemon polish. This was the office of Mrs. Evelyn Calloway, the most feared family law attorney in Atlanta, though to Marcus, she had always just been Auntie Evelyn, a friend of his late mother. She sat behind her massive oak desk, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, listening to the recording Marcus had made the night before. When the audio clip ended, Vanessa's voice sharp and cruel, complaining about moving to Decatur, Evelyn took off her reading glasses and let out a long, heavy sigh. "Well, sugar," she said, her voice rich with the cadence of the Old South. "That's not a wife. That's a liability. Is it enough?" Marcus asked, leaning forward. "Is it enough to protect the assets?" "In Georgia conduct matters," Evelyn nodded, tapping a manicured fingernail on the desk. "This recording proves she's not leaving because of abuse or adultery. She's leaving because the money dried up. It proves financial opportunism. It's the golden ticket, Marcus. But you have to stay the course. Let her file first. Let her put in writing that she wants out because of your insolvency. It seals her fate." "She's going to file soon," Marcus said, looking out the window at the gray skyline. "She looked at me this morning like I was a stain on the carpet." "Let her," Evelyn said firmly. "Now, get out of here. Go somewhere that makes you feel like a human being again. You look like you've been carrying the weight of the world." Marcus didn't want to go back to the empty, cold luxury of the townhouse, so he drove. He drove past the high-end boutiques of Lenox Square, past the glass towers of Midtown, and found himself drifting toward South Atlanta. He parked his car near an old brick building that had been converted into a community center named Hope and Grace. He wasn't sure why he stopped there, perhaps just to be somewhere where nobody knew him as Marcus Thorne, the senior architect. He walked inside, the air thick with the smell of pine sol and turkey broth. A line of people was forming near the serving station. Marcus stood near the back, looking lost, still wearing his expensive wool coat, but looking defeated enough to blend in with the weary souls around him. "You look like you could use something hot," a voice said. Marcus turned to see a woman in a red apron, carrying a tray of clean mugs. She looked to be in her 30s, with braids tied back in a practical ponytail and eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Her name tag read Grace. I'm not here for food," Marcus stammered, realizing how out of place he must seem. "Honey, everybody is here for something," Grace said gently, handing him a mug of coffee. "Some for food, some for company, some just to get out of the wind. We don't ask questions here. Just sit down. Take a load off." Marcus took the cup. It was cheap instant coffee, bitter and too hot, but it tasted better than anything he'd had in weeks. He watched Grace move through the room, talking to veterans, single mothers, and the elderly with the same level of respect she'd show a governor. She didn't look at their clothes. She looked at them. For the next 2 hours, Marcus didn't leave. Instead, he took off his coat, rolled up his sleeves, and walked up to the dishwashing station. "Need a hand?" he asked Grace. She looked him up and down, noting the silk tie he'd forgotten to take off. "You sure? That looks like a dry-clean-only kind of shirt." "It's just a shirt," Marcus said, grabbing a sponge. "I need to work." They worked side by side in a comfortable silence, scrubbing large metal pots. It was menial, hard labor, the kind Marcus hadn't done since he was in college, but it felt purifying. When the last pot was stacked, Grace bumped his shoulder with hers. "You wash a mean pot, Mr. Stranger," she teased, wiping her hands on her apron. "Most people who come in here dressed like you usually just want to take a selfie for Instagram and leave. You actually worked." "It felt good to be useful," Marcus admitted, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the steam from the sink. To be valued for something other than providing. "Work is work," Grace smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression that made Marcus's breath hitch. "We appreciate you. You're a good man. A good man. Not a rich man. Not a successful man. Just a good man." The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He realized he hadn't heard a genuine compliment from Vanessa in years that wasn't tied to a purchase or a vacation. His phone buzzed against the countertop, vibrating violently against the metal surface. Marcus dried his hands and picked it up. The screen lit up with a text message from Vanessa. "We need to talk. Tonight. Don't be late." Marcus stared at the screen, the warmth of the kitchen evaporating instantly as the cold reality of his double life came rushing back. He knew that tone. He knew that phrasing. The clock had run out. That text message just shattered the only peace Marcus has felt in weeks. If you are still watching and you find this detailed storytelling valuable, please drop the number 1 in the comments below. Let me know you're locked in and rooting for Marcus. And if you haven't joined the family yet, I highly recommend you subscribe to the Black King channel and turn on that notification bell right now so you never miss a video. Your support is what helps us continue creating great content to inform and inspire you every single day. Now, let's continue and see what awaits Marcus back at the townhouse. Vanessa believed she was running a race to save her financial future, but in reality, she was sprinting toward a cliff edge of her own making. 2 days before Christmas, the Thorne residence looked like a holiday postcard from the outside. Wreaths hung from every window, and white lights wrapped around the massive columns of the front porch. Inside, however, the air was brittle, like thin ice ready to crack under the slightest weight. A 12-foot Fraser fir stood in the corner of the living room, adorned with crystal ornaments and gold ribbons, but it felt less like a celebration and more like a monument to a dead king. Marcus sat at the kitchen island, surrounded by a scatter of fake bills and calculator tape, his head in his hands. He was playing the role of the desperate, drowning husband to perfection. Across the room, Vanessa was pacing. She wasn't wearing her usual cozy holiday pajamas. Instead, she was dressed in her expensive Lululemon workout gear, her hair pulled back tight, looking ready for battle rather than a silent night. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. It wasn't the festive chime of a neighbor delivering cookies. It was a sharp, demanding sound. "I'll get it," Vanessa said quickly, too quickly. Marcus stayed seated, listening to the murmurs at the front door. He heard the heavy thud of the door closing, and then the clicking of Vanessa's heels returning to the kitchen. She wasn't alone. A stranger, a man in a nondescript windbreaker holding a thick manila envelope, followed her in. "Mr. Marcus Thorne?" the man asked, his voice devoid of emotion. "Yes." Marcus stood up, feigning confusion. "You've been served." The man thrust the envelope into Marcus's chest, turned on his heel, and walked out without another word. Marcus looked down at the envelope. In bold, black letters, the words "petition for dissolution of marriage" stared back at him. He looked up at Vanessa. She had stopped pacing and was now standing by the Christmas tree, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Van?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling slightly. "What is this?" "It's a divorce, Marcus," she said calmly, as if she were ordering a latte. "I filed this morning." "But why?" "We just talked about downsizing. I thought we were going to figure this out. I thought we were a team." "We were a team when you were a partner at the firm," Vanessa corrected him, her voice icy. "But I spoke to my lawyer. If I stay married to you while you go through bankruptcy or foreclosure, my credit gets ruined too. I can't let your failure drag me down. I have to protect my future." "My failure?" Marcus stepped closer, holding the papers like a shield. "I lost my job 3 days ago, Vanessa. 3 days. And your reaction is to serve me papers 2 days before Christmas. It's just timing, Marcus." "Don't be dramatic," she scoffed, walking over to the kitchen counter to pour herself a glass of water. "Look, I'm being generous. My lawyer drafted a settlement agreement attached to the back. I'm willing to walk away without alimony if I get the cash from the joint savings account, the $40,000. You can keep the house. Or sell it. I don't care. I just want the liquidity and a clean break before the new year." It was a masterclass in cruelty disguised as pragmatism. She wanted the cash, the only liquid asset they had left, and she wanted to saddle him with a mortgage she thought he couldn't pay. "So that's it?" Marcus asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. 5 years of marriage. The trips, the memories, the vows. It all ends because I had a bad week. Vanessa set her glass down hard. Love doesn't pay the bills, Marcus. And I'm not going to be a poor architect's wife living in a rental indicator. Just sign the papers. It's better for both of us. The room fell silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. Marcus looked at the woman he had married. He looked for a trace of the girl he met at the jazz festival 5 years ago, the one who laughed at his bad jokes. She wasn't there. Only a stranger stood before him, calculating his net worth in her head. "You're right," Marcus said, his demeanor shifting. The slump in his shoulders disappeared. He straightened his spine, his eyes losing their look of desperation and gaining a sharp, steel-like glint. "It is better for both of us." He tossed the manila envelope onto the counter. It slid across the marble and hit the fruit bowl. "I'm not signing those, Van," Marcus said smoothly. "You have to," she snapped, eyes narrowing. "Or I'll drag this out in court and bleed you dry." "No, you won't." Marcus reached into his leather briefcase, which had been sitting by his feet. He pulled out a sleek, navy blue folder embossed with the gold logo of Callaway and Associates. He slid it across the island toward her. "I think you should read this first," Marcus said, his voice steady and deep. "My petition was filed at the courthouse at 9 a.m. this morning. 3 hours before yours." The silence in the lawyer's conference room was so heavy that one could almost hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, counting down to the moment the truth would finally explode. It was the morning of Christmas Eve, and outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Callaway and Associates high-rise, Atlanta was waking up to a gray, festive bustle. Inside, however, the atmosphere was anything but celebratory. Marcus sat at the long granite table, looking nothing like the defeated man of the past few weeks. He was freshly shaved, wearing his best charcoal suit, and his posture was upright and commanding. Beside him sat Mrs. Evelyn Callaway, looking every bit the legal matriarch in a crimson blazer, her hands folded calmly atop a closed file. Across the table, Vanessa shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Her attorney, a young, aggressive man with a shiny watch and too much gel in his hair, was doing enough talking for both of them. "My client's position is very simple," the young lawyer stated, sliding a paper across the table. "Given Mr. Thorne's recent termination and impending financial instability, Mrs. Thorne is requesting an immediate liquidation of the joint savings account, totaling $43,000, to be transferred to her as a lump sum settlement. In exchange, she waives alimony and grants Mr. Thorne full ownership of the marital home, along with its mortgage liability." He leaned back, looking smug. "It's a generous offer, considering Mr. Thorne is currently unemployed." Vanessa avoided Marcus's eyes, staring intently at the centerpiece on the table. She looked nervous, tapping her heel against the floor leg. Mrs. Callaway didn't even look at the paper. She adjusted her glasses slowly, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. "That is an interesting proposal, counselor," she said, her voice smooth like molasses but with a hidden bite. "But before we've discussed the division of assets, I think it is crucial we establish the context of this separation. We wouldn't want the court to misunderstand Mrs. Thorne's intentions." "The context is irrelevant," Vanessa's lawyer snapped. "It's a no-fault state." "Oh, context is always relevant in my office," Mrs. Callaway corrected him gently. She reached out and tapped the screen of a tablet sitting in the center of the table. Suddenly, Vanessa's voice filled the room, clear and undeniable. "I have to wait until after Christmas. If I file before the 5-year mark, I'm not wasting 4 years and 11 months, waiting for that year-end bonus." Vanessa's face went ash-gray. Her lawyer froze, his smug smile vanishing instantly. The recording continued, playing the part where she called Marcus boring and admitted she was just waiting for the check to clear. When silence returned to the room, it was deafening. That is out of context," Vanessa stammered, her voice trembling. "I was venting. I was emotional because Marcus lost his job. I was scared for our future." "Is that so?" Marcus spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, deep, and resonated with a power he hadn't felt in a month. "You were scared because I was unemployed?" "Yes." Vanessa looked at him, eyes wide with fake tears. "I panicked, Marcus. I didn't want us to lose everything. I didn't mean any of those things." Marcus stood up slowly, buttoning his jacket. Well, then you have nothing to worry about, Van. Because I'm not unemployed. Vanessa blinked. What? I wasn't fired, Marcus said, watching the realization dawn on her face. I was promoted. I made senior partner last week. The severance I told you about? That was actually my signing bonus. And the year-end commission? It's double what it was last year. For a moment, Vanessa looked as if she had been slapped. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Then, a sudden desperate hope flooded her eyes. She practically leaped from her chair, reaching across the table to grab Marcus's hand. Oh, Marcus. Oh, thank God, she cried, her voice shrill. I knew it. I knew you were too talented to let go. Baby, this is wonderful. We don't have to divorce. We can fix this. I was so stressed by Sheila. She got in my head. But we're okay now, right? We're a team. The young lawyer looked confusingly between his client and the opposing party, realizing his case had just imploded. Marcus looked down at Vanessa's manicured hands clutching his sleeve, the same hands that had served him divorce papers less than 24 hours ago. He gently but firmly peeled her fingers off his jacket, one by one. No, Vanessa, he said softly. We are not a team. You made it very clear that you are only on the team when we're winning. Marcus, please, she begged, tears streaming down her face now, tears of regret for the lifestyle she just lost, Marcus noted. I love you. You don't love me, Marcus replied, looking her in the eye with a finality that chilled the room. You love my wallet. And as of this morning, neither of those things belongs to you anymore. He turned to Mrs. Calloway. Evelyn, please proceed with the filing based on the evidence of financial opportunism. I'm done here. Marcus turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving Vanessa standing there, wailing his name, clutching a settlement agreement that was now worth less than the paper it was printed on. The most precious gifts are not the ones wrapped in silver paper or tied with red velvet bows. They are wrapped in the quiet peace of a soul no longer carrying a heavy burden. Christmas Eve had finally arrived, bringing with it a rare dusting of snow that coated the Atlanta streets in a hush of white. While the lights of the Buckhead townhouses flickered with the frantic energy of last-minute parties, the Hope and Grace Community Center in South Atlanta glowed with a different kind of warmth. The air here didn't smell of expensive perfume and tension. It smelled of roasted turkey, sage dressing, and sweet potato pie. Marcus stood behind the serving line, wearing a simple cable-knit sweater and a festive green apron. He wasn't the senior partner of a prestigious architecture firm tonight. He was just Marcus, the guy scooping mashed potatoes for a line of people who had nowhere else to go. You came back, a voice said softly beside him. Marcus turned to see Grace, her eyes wide with surprise as she balanced a tray of cornbread. She looked at him, then at the apron, a slow smile spreading across her face. I told you the coffee was terrible, Marcus joked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. I figured the food had to be better. We do all right. Grace laughed, the sound warm and genuine. But usually our volunteers don't drive here in a Range Rover. I saw it in the lot. Marcus paused, the ladle resting in the potato pan. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out an envelope. It wasn't a subpoena or a legal threat. It was a check. I have a confession, Grace, he said, his voice dropping so only she could hear over the hum of the crowd. I lied to you the other day. I wasn't out of work. I was lost. I was testing someone I thought loved me, and in the process, I realized I had forgotten what real care looked like until you handed me that cup of instant coffee. He slid the envelope across the stainless steel counter toward her. Grace wiped her hands on her apron and opened it. Her gasp was audible. Inside was a check for $20,000, the exact amount Marcus had planned to spend on the lavish Christmas party Vanessa had demanded. Marcus, Grace whispered, looking up at him with tears welling in her eyes. This is too much. You don't have to do this. I was poor in the ways that mattered, Grace, Marcus replied gently. I had a big house and a cold heart. You reminded me that wealth isn't what you keep in the bank. It's what you're willing to give away. Grace didn't say anything. She just reached out and squeezed his hand, a touch that was firm, grateful, and devoid of any calculation. In that touch, Marcus felt more connection than he had felt in 5 years of marriage. Miles away, in a cold, empty apartment in a less desirable part of town, Vanessa sat alone. Her phone was in her hand, the screen glowing with a social media feed full of happy families and couples. She had tried to call Sheila, but her best friend hadn't answered since the news of the divorce and the loss of Marcus's income had broken. Vanessa stared at the contact name Marcus on her screen, her thumb hovering, trembling with a mix of regret and desperation. She realized too late that she had traded a diamond for a handful of glass beads. Back at the center, the dinner service was winding down. The choir from the local AME church had started singing Silent Night, their voices rising in soulful harmony. Marcus took off his apron and folded it neatly. "You leaving?" Grace asked, walking him to the heavy double doors. "For now," Marcus said. "But if you need a dishwasher next Sunday, I'm free." "We always need good help," Grace smiled. "Merry Christmas, Marcus." "Merry Christmas, Grace." Marcus stepped out into the crisp night air. The snow was falling harder now, covering the grime of the city in a pristine blanket. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. There was a missed call and a voicemail from Vanessa. He didn't listen to it. He didn't feel the urge to check on her, to gloat, or to feel angry. He felt nothing. The anchor was gone. With a calm, deliberate motion, Marcus tapped block caller. He slid the phone back into his pocket, took a deep breath of the icy, clean air, and walked toward his car. He had lost a wife, but he had found himself. And as the snow crunched beneath his boots, Marcus Thorne knew that for the first time in a long time, he was exactly where he was supposed to be.